Picture this. You awaken to news that Ottoman forces have set foot in Italy, a mere 7-day trek from the Vatican. Their crimson standards are raised above the fortifications of Otranto, while panicked civilians crowd the pathways leading to Rome. The year is 1480, in the month of August, and all of Europe fears that the crescent is about to cast its shadow over St. Peter's Basilica. But the course of history turns on a single, unforeseen death. Toward the end of the 15th century, the Ottoman Empire spanned from the Danube River to the Euphrates, possessing a fleet that dominated trade across the majority of the eastern Mediterranean. The powers of Venice, Naples, and the Papal States depended on fragile agreements, trusting that the Turks would be preoccupied with conflicts elsewhere. However, Sultan Mehmed II was now pursuing a conquest designed to send shockwaves through all of Christendom, establishing a foothold on Italian soil. Following his capture of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, Mehmed declared himself the successor to the Roman Caesars, convinced that the new Ottoman capital ought to govern both segments of the former empire. He contended that Rome was the rightful counterpart to Istanbul and the most direct route to global dominance. The initial move towards this ambition was to capture a port in southern Italy. Mehmed's advisors selected the fortified harbor of Otranto, a territory within the Kingdom of Naples. It was chosen for its capacity to harbor warships and its fortress overseeing the Strait of Otranto. From that strategic point, their galleys could disrupt Venetian and Spanish shipping lanes, while ferries landed troops all along the Apulian coast. The town's defenses were outdated, its military presence was minimal, and the closest aid was several days' journey away. On the 28th of July, 1480, Gedik Ahmed Pasha set sail from Avlona with a fleet of about 90 warships and transport vessels, disembarking close to 10,000 troops before the walls of Otranto. Following days of artillery fire and continuous assaults, the city submitted to the Ottomans on the 11th of August. In the ensuing chaos, hundreds of inhabitants were put to death, including a group that would later be revered as the Martyrs of Otranto, while countless others were taken into slavery, held for payment, or escaped into the countryside. Once the city was secured, the conquerors started reinforcing the defenses for subsequent campaigns. The news of Otranto's capture arrived in Rome on August 11th, delivered by friars who spoke of wide-scale killings and crescent symbols painted on church exteriors. Pope Sixtus IV called for a new crusade, gave orders to fortify the city's defenses, and pleaded with France, Spain, and Hungary for military support. Despite the growing panic, the monarchies of Europe were consumed by their own conflicts, leaving Italy to largely defend itself. Leaflets quickly circulated, alleging that the invaders planned to advance on Rome, assassinate the Pope, and forcibly convert captured Italians. Merchants escaped to Florence, aristocrats moved their families to fortified positions in the hills, and the cost of grain skyrocketed in a matter of weeks. The psychological trauma, even more than the direct military danger, persuaded numerous Europeans of the Ottomans' invincibility. Within Otranto, Gedik Ahmed Pasha focused on strengthening the walls, digging new wells, and awaiting the arrival of fresh troops to press the Holy War northward along the Adriatic. Mehmed II had commanded him to capture Brindisi and Taranto as the next objectives, then transport 16,000 cavalrymen to join a secondary fleet arriving from Greece. All indications were that the Sultan intended to stay in Italy for the winter and restart the offensive in the spring. However, on May 3, 1481, as he was traveling for another military review, Mehmed II collapsed near Gebze and passed away, likely from poison administered by his own doctor. The news reached the front 6 weeks later, halting all troop deployments, silencing all communications, and undermining all assurances of new gunpowder. Lacking a reigning sultan, Ahmed Pasha ceased all offensive actions, began rationing provisions, and transformed Otranto from a launchpad for invasion into a defensive outpost. Meanwhile, in Istanbul, the succession was contested. The popular prince Sem hastened from Anatolia, whereas the prudent Bayezid employed the Janissaries to secure the royal palace. Neither contender would risk dispatching naval support to Otranto while the line of succession was in question. This fraternal conflict drained the empire's resources internally and left its expeditionary force isolated, effectively ending any possibility of a march on Rome. Most historians concur that had Sem been victorious, he would have mobilized the navy, strengthened Otranto, and pushed north to confront the Pope, just as his father had envisioned. Instead, Bayezid emerged as the victor, deemed the Italian campaign an overreach, and commanded Ahmed Pasha to relinquish the foothold. By September of 1481, Ottoman forces were boarding ships back to Albania, and Neapolitan soldiers marched back into a devastated yet liberated city. The Otranto campaign demonstrates how the demise of a single leader could redirect the destiny of millions, transforming an expansionist empire into a cautious one in a single night. In the medieval period, a single life determined whether Rome would endure a siege or remain secure. No event better captures the harsh reality of the age than a halted invasion, thwarted not by opposing forces, but by a sudden death.